Welcome to Political Fight. We have a great guest, but first, a weekly update. Also, Political Fight is not just about fighting. Every month, we will make a donation to an organization to help girls go to school, refugees in the environment, and many more. This month, if you watch Political Fight, we will make a donation, depending on the number of viewers, to the Malala Fund, an organization that helps girls go to school safely in Pakistan. Now it's time to see the key players from this week. Vladimir Putin and his plan to swing the American election, Donald Trump and his plan to destroy the environment, Jared Kushner and his plan for a secret back channel to the Russian government. This week's guest is Ann Carlson, an environmental lawyer who teaches at UCLA Law School. Political Fight terror update. Al-Qaeda might not be anymore. Instead, there was another group that started in 1999. No one thought much of it until 2014 when it took over the Iraqi city of Mosul. The name of this group is Islamic State or ISIS. Even though ISIS has lost much territory, it still controls oil wells, dams, and has attacked several Western countries including Manchester, London, and Paris. But the most stunning attack was on a country that actually supports terrorism, Iran. ISIS fighters raided the Iranian parliament with guns and a suicide bomber. ISIS fighters also attacked the grave of Ayatollah Khomeini, the leader of Iran's 1979 revolution. But Iran is pointing fingers too fast, blaming Saudi Arabia and the United States, just days after Saudi Arabia signed a $100 million weapons deal with the United States. The attacks vary from gun attacks, suicide bombings, to knife attacks in London. ISIS will likely continue to stun the world. It took ISIS 15 years to become this powerful. It might take another 15 years before they're defeated.
Speaking about terror, at an Ariana Grande concert, transformed from fun to the death of 22 people. The person behind this is Abeldi, a 22-year-old man who spent 3 years on making a bomb consisting of glass and nails. He did it in a large bag over his shoulder and caused the death of 22 innocent people and dozens of injured. Ariana Grande is now raising money for the injured. President Trump announced he is leaving the Paris Climate Agreement. Thankfully, it will take almost 4 years to withdraw from the agreement, leaving the final decision up to who is the president in 2020. Former director of the FBI, James Comey, testified in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee. In sworn testimony, Comey said Trump invited him to a private dinner and awkwardly asked him for his loyalty. Comey also said in another meeting, Trump asked him to drop the investigation into Michael Flynn. Reality Winner is a U.S. contractor with a high-level security clearance, and she leaked a document showing the U.S. government is investigating Russian interference in our elections. She is currently in prison for leaking the information.
Welcome, Anne.
Thank you.
Can you explain to us what the Paris Agreement does?
Yes, the Paris Agreement is an agreement that 185 countries entered into to promise to reduce the emissions that cause climate change. And here's what's interesting about that. Each country got to choose what it was going to do. Instead of having the world kind of tell each country what it should do, they voluntarily submit their own agreements about what they're willing to do.
Is it a big deal that President Trump announced that the U.S. is leaving the Paris Climate Agreement?
It's a really big deal. Actually, what's even a bigger deal is that President Trump had already made clear that he wasn't going to agree to do what the U.S. had already promised to do to reduce its emissions when President Obama entered into the agreement for the United States. But it's a really big deal for two reasons. One, because historically the United States has been the biggest emitter of the emissions, greenhouse gas emissions that cause climate change. It's no longer the biggest emitter, but historically it has been, and those emissions stay up in the atmosphere for hundreds of years sometimes. So our contributions are really, really important. But the other reason it's really important is because the United States has been a leader in getting other countries to come along and agree to reduce their emissions. China, India and other developing countries that are big emitters. So without the United States leadership in there, there's worry about whether the global community will continue to live up to its agreements.
Do you think he's going to disfund the EPA? Or?
Well, he's not going to completely disfund it. He's going to try to cut its budget really, really in huge ways. Right now, the proposal is to reduce the budget by 30%, but I don't think that Congress will let him do that, even a Republican Congress, because I think what a lot of Republican members of Congress understand is that Americans care a lot about clean air and clean water and about climate change.
What does it mean to leave the Paris Climate Agreement?
Well, technically, what's kind of funny about the president's announcement is the U.S. actually can't leave for 3 years after the agreement came into effect. And then, once it decides to leave, it still takes another year before it gets out. So technically, the United States will remain a party to the Paris Agreement until the next presidential election. So we won't really leave, but what we are saying is we're not participating.
Do you think that will affect the world?
Yes and no. So I think that other countries will continue to do their part to reduce their emissions. In fact, China, which is the country that emits the most greenhouse gas emissions, is already ahead of what it promised to do. It's already probably going to end up doing more than what it promised to do under the Paris Agreement. And that's also true for India. And a lot of countries have stepped up to say, we're going to continue to fight climate change even if Donald Trump is stepping back and doing nothing.
What do you think about James Comey's testimony in general?
Well, I thought he was really believable. I'd be curious what you guys think too, but I thought he seemed honest. He seemed to try not to overstate what was happening. I think he likes being in front of television cameras. I think he liked being there. He's very comfortable testifying, but I thought he was very believable.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Who is more believable, Trump or Comey?
Well, for me, that isn't even a contest. I think Comey is way more believable. Part of it is we have documented lies by the president over and over and over again, almost on a daily basis. And I don't think that Comey has any reason to lie. I think he was just doing his job, and he felt really threatened in his job that the president was trying to do things that were interfering with his ability to do his job. There's a lot of reasons why the president might want to lie, because he's trying to protect himself and potentially maybe his son-in-law and his friends.
Do you think James Comey should have told Donald Trump that he should never expect his loyalty?
Well, I think he tried to do that. I think the hard part is that, think about like being in that position. Even though James Comey was the director of the FBI and a powerful guy, it's pretty intimidating to have the president of the United States call you in, have a dinner, and keep over and over again saying that he wants your loyalty. So I think he tried to say, that's not appropriate, I'll be honest with you. And maybe at the end when he said honest loyalty or loyal honesty, whatever it was, I think he was trying to do his best, and it was clearly hard with a very powerful man trying to demand his loyalty.
What do you think about Jeff Sessions' testimony?
So I guess I thought that the guy has no memory because he forgot just about everything when it was convenient. And I thought it was outrageous that he wouldn't answer a lot of questions. I just think that unless the president is going to say this is privileged under an executive privilege, he's in front of Congress and he should have answered the questions. That's what I didn't find him very believable.
So you thought Jeff Sessions lied?
But did you?
It's a good question. Did he lie when he kept saying he couldn't remember things? Well, it's really hard to prove that somebody doesn't remember something, so it's convenient. Yeah, I think he probably lied, but I don't know for sure.
Did you believe him when he said there was no communications in the Russian election?
So
in the American?
I think it's possible that Sessions doesn't know what all the other Trump people were up to with the Russians. I think it's completely believable that he was trying to do what Trump wanted, which is to improve relations with the Russians by giving the Russians everything they wanted. But I don't know that he was involved beyond that. So I don't know why he lied when he didn't reveal that he had met with the Russians on his initial forms that he filled out. But, maybe there's more to it than we know. I think we'll find out once we find out what Mueller.
The main reason is Trump. What do you think the main reason that Trump wanted connections with the Russia is?
So I really don't know, but here's my guess, and it's only speculation. My best guess is that for a long time, Trump and his businesses could not borrow money from American banks, and they needed a lot of money. And I think they got money from a whole bunch of shady Russian characters. And those Russian characters, I think, are connected to Putin. And so I think the Putin kind of big, group of people who surround Putin who had connections with Trump have something on Trump. I don't know if it's illegal loans or if there's tax fraud or what's going on. And so I think in exchange, the Trump people are willing to try to improve relations with Russia, principally by removing the sanctions, because that gives a lot of money back to powerful people around Putin. So that's my best guess, but who knows? It's all very, very shady and secretive and hard to know.
There is a large crack in the fourth biggest iceberg. If it breaks, it will lead to more rising seas. Why do you think Republicans refuse to see that global warming is real and it having real life consequences?
That is such a hard question about why Republicans don't want to acknowledge that climate change is happening. Because what's really weird is they used to believe in climate change until about 6 or 7 years ago, and then they stopped believing in climate change. So that has to be politics, and I think the politics come from two places. I think the biggest place that the politics come from is that there are big money interests that want more coal and more oil in the economy, and they put a lot of money into Republican elections. And they have been very successful in getting Republican voters who are on the kind of right-wing part of the party to think that climate change is a bad liberal conspiracy. And so I think a lot of Republican politicians worry that if they're too strong on climate change, they will get a political opponent from the right and they'll lose their jobs. They won't get reelected. So I think that it's the combination of all the money and then worrying that they're going to lose their jobs instead of doing the right thing and actually trying to protect the planet for their children, their grandchildren.